Right now we're on brooklynstation.com, but definitely catch King and Queen Radio while you're at it. All right, let's see. I had the show pretty carefully prepared, but naturally I came up here from my meditation stealing hemisync, so my frequency seems to have caused some malfunctions. Meanwhile, we will go through the show. I have a pretty good show for you this evening. It included a lot of research. But first, let's tell you what's going on with King Queen Radio and BrooklynStation.com because I know you all want to know. All right, so Saturday we have the dance parade. Highly recommend coming to see it, and you will see us with our three DJs. We got our own DJ Sean S. We also have DJ Chris Lewis, and we have Herbert Holler. Woohoo! And we will have dancers. Now we finance that out of our own pocket, so we do have a GoFundMe going. It is on our website. So if you go to brooklynstation.com or kingandqueenradio.com, you will see the link to donate money if you would be so kind. We are also seeking sponsors, guests for the show, and even if you want your own show. So you can either call if you want to speak to Sister Dobong, you can call 718-253-7273. For advertising, you can either call that number or you can call me, Shay Bernhardt, at 929-694-8741. And I will post the thing that you so people who later on in the show for people who would like to write those numbers down. Now, let's see. So the show tonight, and basically, to recap for everybody. Last week, basically, I read a top secret paper that had been caught in leaked in back in 1979 from being caught in a copy machine at Boeing, and somebody bought it at a surplus sale and found it jammed in the copy machine. In this paper, it spoke of a rather long term strategy of a small number of people that create a shadow world government, basically high power, the powers that be, the people that truly call the shots. Now, one of the things I like to point out as far as the start of this show, you notice I had Mr. Schweikart there speaking, and you know, this is kind of one of those things because it's not all politicians that are bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, ain't nothing more useless in politics because it's a dirty business. So there's no such thing as an honest politician. They get eaten alive. But this man, what he's talking about, he's obviously upset, and so not all politicians are bad, but we have some bad actors, as he said, and they basically there's no point in us focusing on that though. But you need to be aware that there's something going on behind the scenes that not even he knows about, right? It's a hidden agenda, and it is in our best interest if we defeat that hidden agenda. And the best way to defeat that hidden agenda is, I mean, back in the day, I thought it would be like things like revolution and stuff like that, but it's not. It's worldwide awakening. See, because it is really through the mechanism of worldwide awakening. That's the only thing that will save us from nuclear annihilation at this point. You can see in the news that they're pushing for it, and that's not necessarily people like Mr. Schweikart there, and that. Oh, by the way, you notice nobody was listening to him, which is too bad because I read the congressional budget outlook that he speaks of in this later on in the speech there, and he's not lying, and nobody's listening, which is too bad. I feel for the guy because it's you can see he's concerned, and a lot of what he's concerned about has to do with disinformation, and so my job as a shaman is, or in other words, a spiritual guide. My job is to somehow, some way, help lost people come in contact with an understanding of the spiritual world, help those that are lost touch the divinity. And in this day and age, that's not, I mean, it would be bad enough if I was just dealing with a small tribe, but it's like I consider the world my tribe. I've been drifting for 20 years. I don't have anywhere I consider home except the world itself. And y'all are my brothers and sisters. So, that's a heavy burden to take because from the level of understanding I have, I see a lot of lost souls and a lot of, not a lot, everything that we are being taught goes totally against what our ancestors believed. Now, here in a second, I'm gonna play some music and and try to make sure I finish fixing whatever ghosts are tinkling around in my system. And what I want you to contemplate is the fact that, and I will show you this too, because this is very interesting. The fact that in the official scientific and archaeological world, you cannot get away with trying to say anything's over 5,000 years old. Basically, it's starting to kind of change, but still in the official circles, once you say something, you find that there's some type of thing like civilization beyond Sumer, you begin to be considered a pseudoscientist, and that's basically the equivalent of career suicide. So, I mean, think on that, because I mean, it's like what I wonder, and it's like one of the things I'm gonna be doing over the next couple days, or the next couple episodes here, is I'm gonna walk you through 43,000 years of human history that we know about in detail. History of civilization, where Sumer came from. You can't look it up on the net. I mean, you might find like vague references, but really, if you try to look up anything like 43,000 years of human civilization on the net, you're just going to get referred to Sumer. But Sumer came from somewhere, and that was an empire called Arata originally. It is kind of spread. I mean, it seems to centralize basically in northern Ukraine, part of Russia, and from there they spread out. I have a map I'll show you here shortly once I sit down and really get into discussing this civilization. But this civilization was actually very sophisticated, and they had a place called Shunan, which is significantly larger and probably older than Stonehenge. It's very, very old, and it's very sophisticated, and it has a lot of petroglyphs that they wrote in there. It was nicknamed the library. And I can't really remember where I read it. I think it was during my studies of Egypt and the Isis Osiris cult and the mysteries that I came across a thing where somebody asked the scribe why they used clay tablets, stone, and lead sheets to write stuff down. And what the scribe said really stuck with me, because he said, "So it can't be changed." And it makes me wonder, even then during the Egyptian Empire, there seems to be a concern about basically their writings being changed and altered. Um, it's going to get real mysterious and there's going to be you got to kind of have an open mind, because what our ancestors believed 43,000 years ago is it goes very hand in hand with some science used by the CIA in their attempts at psychic warfare, called the Gateway / Stargate program, which we will discuss that a little bit, but that's a lot of information too. So we're going to go into that on another episode. What we're going to discuss on this episode is simply how far back our actual knowledge of civilization goes, and what they believed, and the lifestyle they lived as compared to what we have been taught. Because as a shaman, I have a responsibility to guide, and right now it's like there's not like a lot of guidance is based on what we've all been indoctrinated, programmed to believe, and you know that concerns me. I'm a lot like as that speech at the start of it. I'm a lot like that. I spend a lot of my time frustrated. That's not for me. because I don't feel the void in me anymore. You know, I have an understanding of my spirituality and my connection to the divine. But a lot of people are misled in a lot of different ways that prevents them from being able to connect, and they feel that void. I know, I've been there. You know, it's like, and so the idea here is to, I can't tell anybody what their truth is, what their reality is. All I can do is present what I have learned in my research, and I'm very well credited. I have a master's degree level of education, a lifetime of scholarship and searching, and 20 years of wandering and with an open mind and learning from everybody I could. I hitchhiked cross country in 2013, so you know it's like I've talked to a lot of people. I've listened to a lot of people, and the listening is the more important part. I've got the self confidence to believe in myself and my understanding, but I've also got the humility to learn from other people and their understanding, and that's an important part. Um, so I'm gonna go over here and kick on some music and work out the rest of the show real quick because I seem to be haunted electrically, and I think it's because I've been working on meditation geared towards out of body experiences and using hemisync, which we'll discuss briefly on this episode and then in depth on another episode. But basically. Um, yeah, I'd practice a pretty intense type of meditation. So I came out of that right before I come up here, and then the whole point of it is to raise your body frequency, which causes a lot of wonky things to happen. So with that, I'm gonna go over and kick on some music. Again, you're listening to BrooklynStation.com, which is a multicultural station, and of course, then you got your Afro-Cuban and you know, some house and stuff like that at KingandQueenRadio.com. Give us a listen, tell your friends, and let me kick on some music.
Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swavanam chajamohat nidram najanma mritor trisat swarupi. Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swapanam chajamohat nijam najanma mritor trisat swarupi. Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swapanam chajamohat nijam najanma mritor trisat swarupi. Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swapanam chajamohat nidram najanma mritor trisat swarupi. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swapanam chajamohat nidram najanma mritor trisat swarupi. Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swapanam chajamohat nidram najanma mritor trisat swarupi. Sudosi budosi naranjanasi samsara maya pariyajitesi samsara swapanam chajamohat nidram najanma mritor trisat swarupi. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. You are forever pure, you are forever true, and the dream of this world can never touch you. So give up your attachment and give up your confusion and fly to that space that's beyond all illusion. Sudo se budo se naranjana se samsara maya pariya jete se samsara swapanam jaja moha nidram na janma mrityor trisatsva rupi. Sudo se budo se naranjana se samsara maya pariya jete se samsara swapanam jaja moha nidram na janma mrityor trisatsva rupi. Sudo se budo se naranjana se samsara maya pariya jete se samsara swapanam jaja moha nidram na janma mrityor trisatsva rupi.
Up there we go. We're back. Okay, so now I think I've got everything taken care of. I'm kind of actually getting used to this whole thing with the technology and malfunctioning around me. Seems to have something to do with like the meditation I've been doing lately. It's called hemisync, which basically is uses binaural sound to sync your brain, both halves of your brain. It's actually an interesting effect because it puts you in a meditative state by sound rather than, say, for example, trying to reach it through silence. Yeah, I don't have a lot of patience, so yeah, I heard about it when I was reading the documents on the CIA Gateway program, which, like I said, we will go into it. Right now, what we're discussing is the Arata civilization, which is basically originally the petroglyphs that they were reading went back something around the lines of 22,000 years, but then eventually they figured out that it was about 42,000 years old, which is pretty old. Now let's see. Let me show you. Let me show you the map of like where these guys, the area these guys covered, which should be somewhere around here. I got do a lot of research for these shows, but it's like really hard to keep everything like organized because I go way overboard. But there's a lot of information I'm trying to get across to people, and that's the problem with it is there's so much that's been kept from us. Um, let's see. That's the first thing I want to show you guys is all right. I'm still sharing my screen. Yeah, good deal. All right, so let's take a look here. We're going to do a Google search on the oldest human civilization. All right, so we got the Mesopotamian, which is Egyptian, Indus Valley, and Chinese civilization, right? Was there civilization 10,000 years ago? Emerged in the others beyond the proto-urban settlements, which proto-urban means like basically they were pretty primitive, right? Um, it turns out that's very inaccurate. They're not primitive. They weren't primitive at all. And as a matter of fact, they found that basically speaking, it boiled down to they had a sort of sophisticated water system that would go underneath their huts to provide both air conditioning and they also had a style of heating. They lived in huts that basically had running water. So now think on that. 42,000 years ago, we had running water in our huts and air conditioning, central air conditioning, which we still don't have here in New York. Um, no, I mean seriously, in order to really find this information, because nobody's writing about it in English. However, they have been writing books about it in Ukraine, in basically your Slavic languages, which I cannot read. So I eventually found two people that did a seminar on it, Heather Lee and Tim Hooker, and so a lot of my references for all of this, I had no choice but to go to them. Um, One of the things I found impressive about them, as far as their sources of information and their credibility as academics, is the fact that they had a deep and rather obvious love for the work they were doing. And, they were studying this civilization because it blew their minds, and they very much became attached to it. Now, it's a common misconception that we're taught that we only have five senses, right? But we have more than five senses. Like, let's see. Let me look up. Let me look up. If you take writing in college, they speak of pathos, logos, and ethos, right? These are basically techniques you use to form a connection with people, and and it's like the definition. Logos appeals to the reason and logic. Ethos appeals to the speaker's status or authority. Basically, ethos obviously traces to such words as ethical and ethics. All right, so ethos would be how genuine the person is, and then you got pathos, which is basically emotion. So the Greeks spoke of them as a way to connect with an audience and such, but I mean, it's kind of a little bit more than that. Those are actually senses that we use to perceive the world around us and to connect to other people. You got logic is basically one of the filters that you can use as a means of interpretation that which you take in. So as I take in information, these are the three. These are the basically the form the foundation of the filters that they go through. Now, these senses, as I call them, allow one to feel things like you got pathos, which is more towards the female side, and logos, which tends to be more towards the male side, right? Ethos is just kind of in between, the integrity that a person, the genuineness that a person puts out. Now, each of these, can be considered basically a frequency of energy that a person puts out. So, let's take for example ethos, ethics. If somebody comes up and they're feeding you a ration of BS, you know it right away because that's the energy they're putting out. That's the ethos, and you have an ability to pick that up from people. And so when they say we only have five senses. It's kind of true, but it's kind of not, because there's other ways that we interact with the world besides those five senses, and there's also filters that we push everything that we, all the data we take in through, which determines in the end how we end up interpreting that which we perceive, the data that we intake. Now, I speak of this because it's significant, because this is precisely along the lines of what the spiritual beliefs of the Arata and later the Tripilia, and eventually the Sumerians. So basically, their spiritual beliefs of the Arata civilization was extremely sophisticated for being 42,000 years ago. This is one of the things they believed in. They didn't have male priests; they had female priests. Their library, where a lot of the petroglyphs and Proto-Sumerian writing predating Sumeria by several several thousand years, several millennia, predating the flood. As a matter of fact, in their records, they speak of the Black Sea flooding. So they weathered the flood, and they had an empire that spanned. Let me locate my map real quick so I can show you this, because it's pretty impressive, really. And what makes it impressive is it's from the since it's basically petroglyphs that are fairly easy to make out, combined with Proto-Sumerian writings. So the writings close enough to Sumerian to where they've been able to actually decipher a lot of it. It's definitely it was called this place was called Shunun, the library. And it was basically a library where people wrote what they wanted us to know in stone, and they left a lot of details. They spoke of literally precisely where they sent their different people. Let's see. Let's take it. We'll show you a map right here, real quick. Let me boot this up. All right. So we got this map, which doesn't seem to be cooperating. All right. Yeah, that's no surprise. I get kind of used to it. Let's switch this over here. But basically, they built an empire because this is we highly suspect one of the civilizations that at least built some of the megaliths, since the Shunun is a megalith. Nobody lived there really, but it's significantly older, quite a bit larger than Stonehenge, and it was an observatory. And here towards the end here, I'll show you a picture of this particular megalith. And I'm not quite going into the megaliths yet, because that's a whole nother rabbit hole. What I'm wanting people to understand on this particular episode, and I do have to stop and say one thing, because basically I'm going to be taking everybody down this rabbit hole that's kind of progressive. So, it's like if you miss some episodes of it, it would be highly recommended to go back and watch them. Because we need people to be educated. It's like we'll go into the powers that be and their plots and stuff at a later date, because basically if we learn to find the truth within ourselves, and I can't tell you that truth, I'm just here to show you the truth that I've found, and hopefully that helps guide some people that are confused and are looking for something that makes sense. Because you got to wait through a lot of metotle, as the Toltecs teach it, which is static. there's a lot of distraction and there's a lot of basically static in the energy field around this world right now. And it's like we're going to get into the why energy is so important and how that really affects us, and precisely there's a lot of physics involved there, but we're not going to have to do any math. Thank God, because after I got done with calculus, the idea of taking physics made me shiver. But I mean, we're gonna be discussing some stuff that does go into physics and quantum mechanics. Fortunately, you don't have to understand it. I've spent years banging my head against the wall of quantum theory for just so that I could sit and explain the important factors involved in that to people that don't have years to bang their head against a brick trying to figure that kind of thinking out, and simplify it so it basically applies to them. Because I mean, I honestly, I don't know what keyed me to quantum mechanics other than it's like it was so baffling and confusing and hard to understand that me being stubborn and a scholar, I decided I was going to pound my head against that brick till I understood it, which it's still kind of a brick, again, a brick to the head type of thing. But the gist of quantum mechanics, as far as on the spiritual level, is this: no matter how, the more you magnify solid matter, the less matter is there. So it's basically when you get down to the molecular level, to the point of your basic building blocks of reality, which is what quantum physics is. There That's going down into the smallest pieces of matter that we can perceive at this moment. And it's like the further you go in, the less solid matter becomes, until it's like eventually you get to the point where you realize that nothing in this world is solid. There's no such thing as solid matter. It doesn't exist, at least not scientifically speaking. Now, what precisely is it then? Is the question, and that's basically what quantum physics and quantum mechanics is trying to explain. That's where you get the concept of dark matter. Now, see, the problem is that there's a point in time in history where that somehow, I mean, originally when you went in to learn the mysteries, what they taught you was not only what, I hate this word too, I loathe this word, but I'm just going to say it. Forgive me, all those people that are involved in learning the mysteries, but magic. All right, that's basically what we were eventually taught to call it. It's not magic, it's just science we don't understand yet. But here's the interesting thing, because in 42,000 years ago in Errata, they built an empire that you see this right here. This empire literally went like that. So it's basically it's basically an empire that covered South America, North America, parts of Africa, China, most of Europe, most of the Ukraine, most of Russia, and they sent. I mean, Sumer is where these guys come from. It's like the Vedic beliefs stem from here. All of human civilization stems from this civilization. Now, it's basically the astounding thing about it is that this civilization did not have adversarial words. They had no weapons other than for hunting. They had no words to describe war, jealousy, anger, greed, hate. They didn't have that in their society. And see, this is where I face a challenge in educating people, as far as my journey goes, is that everybody believes that we are naturally violent people. All right, and I guess they censored me again, which happens often. So tune in to, if you're on another station, please tune in to brooklynstation.com, because I will be censored on social media, because The social media is part of the group that I was talking about before. That means Facebook, Instagram, all them. They're going to censor me. It's just how it is. So please go to brooklynstation.com and tune in, and I will continue the story. All right. So here we have this empire 42,000 years ago that spanned basically a pretty good portion of the whole world by the time they were done. And they had no concept of war, and they had no adversarial language. Now, towards the end of the Tripilia, which the Tripilia civilization was basically an offshoot, one of the offshoots of the Arata Empire, right? And basically, if you look it up on the web, Arata is still considered a myth in Sumerian a myth in Sumerian mythology, right? Which, I mean, mythology is a misnomer anyway. The more I research it, the more I found that mythology is probably just people's attempts to explain what was going on around them at that time. If we look back at or go back to what I was originally talking about as far as the scribe and writing in stone, it's like it said, so it can't be changed. And they made that library in stone so it could be remembered and couldn't be changed, right? So here we have this empire that somehow peacefully was created that spanned practically the globe. It spanned a lot further than any of the empires to follow. And this was previous to the flood. And so now what that makes me do is look at the story of the flood, because supposedly the flood was because mankind was just so wicked we had to be destroyed, other than I guess one family. But I have to ask the question, if we were so wicked, how come we didn't have any word for enemy, or any word for war or murder? It's like I suspect that basically we are being misled. Actually, the truth is, I don't suspect. I know it for a fact. But I'm going to leave again. I can't tell you what your truth is. A lot of people are going to cling to truths that they understand or relate to, or even truths that don't serve them, because they're afraid of they're afraid of the unknown. But we each have our journey, and that brings us to another belief that this empire had. And one thing I can tell you is, through my studies of ancient manuscripts, it's like a modern science and all the, it's like I read everything, I study everything, and it's like through all my research, one thing I found is that the level of human ignorance as far as what's really going on around us in this world is just staggering. And a huge percentage of it is that separation between the concept of science and, instead of magic, I hate that word. You go to Las Vegas to see magic. This is mysticism, and mysticism is just basically working with stuff that is beyond our perception. And in this empire, they believe very firmly in the concept of reincarnation. And what's interesting about that is there's a lot of misconceptions about the concept of reincarnation. So let's clear up those misconceptions real quick, so everybody understands what I mean when I speak of reincarnation. Reincarnation basically is based on the concept that there's certain levels of consciousness, which we could call self-awareness. Right now, everybody has the ongoing debate on what consciousness is, but when I'm speaking of consciousness, what I'm going to be speaking of is your ability to perceive reality. All right. So basically, we start out as mineral, and that's I mean, the Earth is alive, the universe is alive, and if you don't believe that, look around you. The Earth is being it's being we're basically the equivalent of a cancer to the Earth right now, but we didn't used to be that way. And that's it's like that's what I'm trying to do is show. I want you all to really think about the beliefs that we started out with before all the madness started, because it, one of the things I constantly ask myself is, it's like they seem to be, there's just this huge, huge push to make sure that anybody that says anything that we lived, any that we had civilization any further than Sumer is basically a laughing stock. And yet we have I mean, they found Shunan in the library. I think it was back in the late 1800s, and I know for a fact that it's been over a generation since we've realized that it's like their records go back 42,000 years, and they're very 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 detailed for their age because they're written in what, stone. All right. So over a generation, we've known this, or it's been known. We haven't known it. You can't, I could only find one English source for information that actually was honest. And, I tried to actually get a hold of the Tim and Lee Hooker to get them on the show, but I don't know where they went. I can't find them. They seem to be, I guess there's, I don't know, it's like they're pretty much, persona non grata or laying low, too busy working or something. I don't know. They don't really. There's just nobody's heard of anything from them that I can find recently. So it's a pity. Because it would be nice if we could get more information like this here in the U.S. Because I mean, we need to know our heritage. This civilization is basically where all of us come from at some point in time or another. They spread all over the whole world. And I mean, I'm not necessarily going to say they're the ones that built all of the megaliths, but they definitely were megalith builders. And it's like the the tools they were using and all that is just. I mean, I've spent a little bit of time studying their tool marks, and I've looked at, I've looked at, I've looked at some of the holes, and I've done a lot of research on megaliths, and we will have an episode that discuss some of the things I've discovered with it, and it's fascinating, really. I mean, I highly recommend looking into our past. But anyway, where was I was at? Oh yeah, reincarnation. Okay, so through mineral, you eventually basically it will become, you go into the animal phase, and once your consciousness starts to elevate to that, then you enter this phase. And then now once we get done here, which, don't get excited, it's not one trip. And basically, this is the drag about it, and this is where like the control of our belief system and the indoctrination and all this constant static we're receiving and the propaganda is really messing us up, because basically it's turning us away from the divinity. I mean, it's like the divinity is there. When I eventually go into the more scientific nature of reality thing on next week's episode, you'll see what I'm saying. We are all connected to the divinity, but it's like connection to the divine started out as an experience, as something you were supposed to experience personally, and then eventually it was made so that you had to experience it through an intermediary, so that basically, it's like, and then all of a sudden, all you had to do was believe, and you were saved. And and it's not. This is such an oversimplification that it's self defeating, because we're here to basically evolve spiritually. And we're very each and every one of us it has a connection to the divine because this universe is the divine. I mean, it's alive, and we will go into that in a further episode too. The important thing to understand is that it's like what we're perceiving is not anywhere close to the entirety of what's going on around us in this universe, and that's what real dark matter is. It's the fact that the realm of the spirit is right here around us. It's not somewhere distant. It's around us, but we can't perceive it. Thus, it's like the meditation I do is based on being able to start perceiving higher higher levels of consciousness, and there's a lot of dangers to it. And it's like here in a second I'm gonna play a little music and take a break for myself. But one of the things that I want you to understand is that everything that I've been telling you right here, this is what they believe, and it's also what I've come to see as true before I ever really stumbled across this. You know, um, I figured out that I figured out that we were that this hatred and jealousy and all of these negative feelings that are just destroying us, and the closed mind, and it's like the anger. I've always understood, in my heart, that that's not a natural human thing. We don't have that type of malice in us because it's a learned behavior, and that's what makes that paper I read last week, coupled with the fact that we seem to have a huge chunk of our history that's deliberately being kept from us, that actually offers scientifically proven and spiritually stuff that spiritually resonates with you, and we don't know it's being kept from us, and it's a terrible thing. For the most part, it's not. And again, let me make sure, I want everybody to understand this, that this is not all political leadership, but it is a significant portion of the ones at the very, very top. So it's like there's a shadow government within all the governments in the world that's working towards some type of end that is not in our favor. But you can't. But there's honest politicians out there. They're not honest. There's politicians that believe in what they're doing, and they're trying to fight. They're basically doing their best to do what their job is, as they understand it. And it doesn't matter whether they're Republican. Doesn't matter whether they're Democrat. They're veterans of the quiet war, because that's where the war is being fought. It's a political war, and those that are trying to somehow do their job are up against people that have all the resources in the world to use against them. And those resources give them an amount of leverage when they decide they want something done that it's hard for anybody else to match. So one of the things I want you to walk away with before, while I go take a break and play some music for you, is that you know those senses of pathos, logos, and ethos are they're something it's an intuitive grasp of the type of energy that a person's putting out. So it's like when you see like last week I showed uh, a clip of one of our fine presidents laughing about going invading Iraq and looking for weapons of mass destruction at a huge seminar of basically the world's broadcasting community, and they're laughing. Okay, now compare that to the video the video clip that started this show, where this guy's talking, and he's obviously he's very concerned. He's not acting. He's very concerned. He's speaking even though that nobody's listening, and he goes there every week and does that. And I highly recommend Representative Schweikart, he's a little salty. I don't agree with all of his. I don't agree with all of the man's stances, but what he has to say about our economy is of critical importance, and I highly recommend that you go and listen to what he has to say, because he's not. I've been through economics. I know very well what he's saying. I've read. What he's talking about. I know very well, and he's not lying. And it's something that here in America, if you're going to vote, you need to look at the congressional budget, because it's like everybody in Congress walked out rather than listen to him, and he's talking about something that boils down to the upcoming collapse of our entire economy, and it's coming sooner than you think, and it's designed that way, and that's the irritating thing. So you see me saying just like him, I'm frustrated because it's like it's really ensconced in the U.S. culture to generally avoid unpleasant truths for some odd reason. And I've been guilty of it myself, but it's like we got some unpleasant truths coming up that we cannot turn away from, and we cannot avoid addressing. And the economical situation is one of them, but the other situation is the first one, the one he was talking about in this clip, which is the fact that there's a world psychological war going on, and we're all on the front line. Disinformation is being spread out on the net so far and so fast that it's like you can't even find the truth anymore. It doesn't exist. Not on the net. You have to go dig in, and you have to know where to dig. Which I'm hoping by the time I get well into this series, I'll be able to show you guys how to weed through. One thing that helps immensely, of course, is those sense of pathos, logos, and ethos. Because let's face it, folks. You all know it. The truth resonates with its own. It has its own resonation. You can recognize the truth from what, like a mile away. Let's see. So basically, these next two tunes I'm gonna play for you. I did. They were improvised jams with somebody from Egypt, somebody was from Spain, and another guy from the United Kingdom, and we had a guy from Russia and a guy from Poland. All right, and we were doing real time improvised jams. So it's like some of these are supposedly enemy countries, but in my firm opinion is that the only enemy the human race have is anybody that would say that we have enemies. Because it's like we're all in this together. They're pushing for this nuclear war thing lately. And that seems, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but the concept of nuclear war at this point in time in our history sounds like madness. Like, first question is the slipstream is going to die within 5 years, they estimate, which means most of us are going to be really screwed anyway. We're all in this together, and what the hell is a bunch of nuclear explosions going to do to the environment? It seems to me like we should probably look to Mars for precisely how bright the idea of nuclear war is. So anybody that's pushing for such a mad enterprise obviously does not have our best interests at heart. And this is the thing. I don't really know how many of the core nucleus of this plot to basically enslave us is, but I do know that they use words like benevolent genocide, which offends me to the core of my very being, and is definitely not something any of us want to deal with. So, basically any representatives that speak of things like benevolent genocide should probably not be in office. I mean, I'm just saying, So with that, let's play some music, eh? By defending the system that's killing them. By defending the system that's killing them. By defending the system that's killing them.
So high, but motors on, everyone's drawn, and everyone's drawn, and everyone's drawn to take your money, to take your soul. They can't get your prices. You need to check your blessings, cause you're advising. Your blessings and your advising. Playing the game. I don't want to sound
By defending the system that's killing them. 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 By defending the system that's killing them.
So high, but motors on, everyone's drawn, and everyone's drawn, and everyone's drawn to take your money, to take your soul. They can't get your prices. You need to check your blessings, cause you're advising. Your blessings and your advising. Playing the game. I don't want to sound
by defending the system that's killing them.
Now imagine a life with no room. Now imagine a life with no government. Work hard, nothing. Now imagine a life with no room. Now imagine a life with no government.
everybody there? Let's see. Let me get this screen sharing out here so I can see. Got to love the modern world, huh? Now, one thing I can say is, I mean, I don't know if everybody's noticed, but we're in the middle of a second renaissance, basically an explosion of the arts. And the reason for that is, of course, that our technology in this day and age has made it so that basically this some of the barriers that would normally prevent people from becoming artists and musicians and creators that used to stand in the way have now been defeated. So that basically, I mean, anybody who wants to, I mean, even if you can use AI to do creation. And there's a lot of debate on that, which I don't really have a dog in that race, other than the fact that and the bottom line is that I think the more people that learn to express themselves creatively, the better, because it uses the imagination, which is kind of what separates us from our previous animal existence. All right, so we were talking about the progression of consciousness. What it boils down to in my research is the fact that consciousness is basically something that has a lot to do with our ability to perceive. So, like when we pass away from here, from the way I hear it, it's death. Death is a lot easier than life. But I also have kind of come across the phenomena that with the study of the ancient civilizations, because up to a certain point, a lot of the spiritual practices of these early civilizations were geared towards basically very much towards communing with the divinity and actually elevating themselves up so that they could perceive these other worlds. And that's basically the point that the Arata civilization was at the height of its empire. They would all gather together, and I found this kind of interesting in that basically the priests were women, and they'd all kick back and they'd do some amanita muscaria mushrooms and smoke some marijuana, and they'd perform these ceremonies in these observatories at specific periods of time. It is standard time. I mean, it turns out that something like, I believe, 70 to 80% of the symbols that we use in our day-to-day existence, the stop signs, the symbols for, I mean, it's ridiculous. Most of the symbols we use came from this civilization, and it's actually quite stunning because it's like we supposedly we didn't know about this civilization, but we did, and we have, and it's just been kept quiet, which makes me wonder what is it they're so afraid of. And I highly suspect that it's the spiritual practices they're afraid of. And the fact of the matter is that I'm gonna end this show. It's gonna be about an 8 minute sequence because it's like rather than boggle the explanation. I'm gonna let Heather Lee Hooker, in her own words, explain basically their practices during like your winter equinox and your or your spring equinox and all that. I mean, I know on the winter equinox, I used to go and do fire walks every year, and that's right. Yes, I've done fire. I've walked on fire barefoot, several times. I actually, I miss doing it. I wish I had the ability to find a place where I could do that again. But it's like there's not a lot of places you can go to walk on fire. There's places, but it's like that's kind of that's a small number of people that are like that have that level of spiritual centering, I guess you would say. I find fire walks on the winter equinox to be very electrifying, elevating. You know, it's like you don't. I've never felt any pain walking on fire, surprisingly enough. And as a matter of fact, it's like I don't know. The last one we were at, we had some video footage of this big face coming out of the fire, and I wish I had the pictures to show you because I mean, it's like when it starts out, the pile of wood for the fire is about like that tall, and it's like it's something like 10 to 15 feet across each way. I think about 15 feet, about about 4.5 to 5 feet tall pile of wood that burns down into the coals, and then you spread them out and go walking. Of course, there's the preparation beforehand, you know, and all that. And needless to say, that particular practice, of course, harkens back to an earlier time in civilization. Yes, so, yeah. Um, so basically, let me get this set up because I just barely got I got the video somewhere around here. Let's see. Right there. There we go. Maybe not. I bet you I put it in my folder. There we go. Sweet. I organized it. As you see, I basically haven't seemed to have had any more problems with electronics, which I'm like very grateful for. Um, yeah, so I'm gonna play one more song for you, and then we're gonna go into that, and I'll end the show and let you go because you know basically once Heather Lee gets done with her speech, which you know, I mean, it's something that you should. I highly recommend people take the time to think about because you know it's like in order to in order to undo the damage that's being done by things like propaganda and the media and the disinformation and the deliberate burning of anything that went against the status quo and the agenda of the powers that be throughout what at least 2,000 years that I can trace. Accurate information is hard to find, you know, and the only way to combat disinformation is with the truth, and the truth resonates with its own frequency. And I'm hoping that you know there's people that you know maybe sharing my truth with them will help them discover their own truth. Because you know, I mean, we got hard times coming, folks. I mean, everybody knows that. You can sense it, you can feel it, and the more you learn, the more you connect with the divinity, the less arguments you have with other people because you know you begin to be able to see the energy waves that connect all of us. That's called basically considered the waking of the third eye. But you know, I mean, we used to have that ability. You'll notice that when we get into the science behind underneath the underlying the construction of the megaliths, the you know basically each and every one of them has two. I conjecture three, and a lot of your archaeologists actually you know they if they could be off the record, nobody would like tell anybody they said it. Most of them would agree. Um, Basically your megaliths tend to be as far as sonic capabilities they're very well tuned like perfectly tuned acoustical spaces, so they're made in order to basically interact with sound perfectly, which means basically, you know, I mean, if you get into the physics of sound, you got your different reflecting surfaces, what that does to the sound when it reflects in different angles. Not only that, but you have your overtone series, which is the physics of you know how the sound is made, and the frequency that the sine wave is at and all that. We're going to get into detail on that shortly after on the episode after this upcoming one. This upcoming one is going to be all about breaking down the science of the nature of reality as as our government secret CIA programs have come to understand it. Because I mean, why not go to them for the information since it's there? And plus they have access to science that scientific spending money we ain't got. So this is as good a place as any. With all the world's resources at their disposal, the science that they go to is definitely one you want to look at, right? Because it's got plenty of funding. So this song I'm gonna play is a little bit. It's kind of a punk rock song. It's a little bit fast. It was one that it's I call it making because it was a time when I was dealing with some issues that I had from that basically I started. There was a point in time where it's like I had these voices that I heard in my head that were always putting me down, putting me down, putting me down. And eventually it got to the point where I had planned my suicide, but then I got distracted and I did something else. And what I did was I went into recovery, and at the time, and I worked the 12 steps, which are remarkably excellent for this is reaching an understanding of yourself. And so I did that, and I mean, it's like I got rid of a lot of I got rid of a lot of self-limiting beliefs that were basically. It turned out these beliefs had been ensconced in me and became my foundational beliefs when I was between the ages of like 5 and 10. And it's like they weren't really based on any fact. They were for the most part based on things people had told me that I decided to believe that were true about myself. And it's like it's a good example of the power of the word, because it's like whoever came up with the whole sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. I'll take the sticks and stones, Holmes, because it's like I can heal from those and be on about my business. But the words, man, the words almost killed me. It's like I went through and I rooted those voices out, and right after that, I wrote this song. And it's like this song is basically, you can almost hear the voices in it, and those voices are what I heard in my head for a while, and it liked to drove me crazy. But the way I was able to put these demons to rest was by going within myself and looking at who I was and what I believed, and taking erroneous beliefs out and replacing them with some principles that that people much wiser than I had taught me throughout my journeys. Because you can't just rip out a core belief and leave nothing a void. You have to have something to replace it with, right? And we're going to eventually get into what I call the universal principles, which is basically the principles that most of your spiritual paths teach. Because I mean, there's a lot of common ground behind the principles of functioning amongst each other and getting along with each other that all your spiritual paths teach them, and they use just different words and different concepts. These universal truths tend to carry a certain resonance and a certain frequency with them, basically, or karma, as some people would say. And what comes around goes around. There's all kinds of there's many different ways to describe it, as there are cultures to describe it, and it tends to be that way with everything, because your culture has a tendency to dictate a lot of how one basically in their younger years how they build their own self-image. And we'll get a little bit more into that a few episodes down the road, because that gets pretty deep too. And the first thing I want to do is basically give you the foundation of what our beliefs were 42,000 years ago, and then I'm going to slowly take you up through what changed, why it changed, how it changed, and the ultimate goal is to if people feel that these pieces of information resonate with them, that maybe it will give them a means of finding their own truth within themselves as well. Now there's a gospel that's considered it was left out of Canaan, although it should have personally I think it should have been included in the Bible, but it did go really against a lot against what the other four books said. Well, maybe not the Book of John, but the Book of John we'll go into at another time. Um, in the book of Judas, one of the things Jesus told Judas in private, according to these writings, which were found. I believe these were. I believe this was either. I think it was Qumran, maybe the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hard to remember. I do so much research that it's like I can't keep track, and AI just doesn't work for me for keeping track of my research either. So sometimes I'm kind of inaccurate about precisely where I learned, but I'll do my best to provide a bibliography and a list of recommended reading and where I gather my information and stuff and put it up, because there's a lot of good information that I've gleaned from a lot of good sources, and I dig deep. And it's like I don't accept the official story, because the official story is always BS. So I do my research and find out for myself, as the beleaguered economic politician was Mr. Schweikart was speaking of. That's what he's urging, is that people should remain cynical, keep an open mind, and find out for themselves before they accept truths. The reason why I'm going over this is because you see, right now we got a generation coming of age that has spent their entire life being bombarded by this media 24/7, and there's been a psychological war going. So it's like they're stuck in a situation where they basically, you got propaganda saying one thing, you got marketing saying another, then you got specific groups of, as the show started, you got specific groups of AI operated farms that just feed disinformation everywhere to everything. So basically, we're being bombarded 24/7 by these voices, and so it's basically like, I remember at one point in time, because I don't have this haunted feeling like that anymore, because I went in and I rooted out the beliefs that were creating this sense of confusion in me, and I removed them. But I had, thanks to some people that spent the time to try to hammer me into me, what I needed, what I needed to know at the time, and Steve Harris, brother, I love you, aho. And by the way, Steve Harris was he actually worked at a prison I did some time in, and was in a program that I went to, and he spent a lot of time, trying to get me to see some things. And a lot of what I am today, I owe to that investment that somebody in a prison system put in me. And I grew up without any mentorship for a long time. So I only had myself to learn from. So that was a really impressive thing. And it's like what that man taught me gave at the time. At the time I scoffed. Yeah, what's this crap? But I've found throughout the years, and this is part of what opened my mind, is some of the most profound experiences of my life I almost missed because I thought they would be lame, and then I went and they turned out to be life changing events, even though they didn't seem at the time like they'd be anything but some place to like sit around and be bored and wish I was doing something else. And after that happened enough, I started, it started changing. I started keeping an open mind towards things that I would normally think were, I wouldn't normally go to. And from there, that started the progression of keeping an open mind towards ideas that I wouldn't normally entertain. And then it's like, it just kind of snowballed. It's like the more open I allowed my mind to be, the more profound the experiences I started having were, and the greater the connection I had to people, and the greater my understanding became. So when I read the book of Judas, and it wasn't really all that long ago, because I came up to a lot of my understandings through different sources than your ancient texts, and when I started digging into the translations of your older texts and started really digging into history and started, and I mean, I'm talking digging. When I started really doing my research, what I found was that I found it to be, I found it to be actually kind of surprising that it's like through researching, through my researches that started over on the science and, the science side of things, the scientific side of the equation and my own intuition, that, everything that I was reading in the old text that the ancients were trying to tell us went right along with it. And so when I read the book of Judas, the Gospel of Judas, that was one of those spiritual experiences I hope nobody ever has to have, because it was one of those things where I'm reading it and I'm jumping up, going, "No way!" Because it was so. It what Jesus told Judas when he was talking to him went so hand in hand with what I had already come to understand through sources of what's going on today, through modern contemporary sources of information. Now think about that. I'm looking at sources of current events, politics, and science, and this is going hand in hand with something Jesus supposedly said to Judas 2,000 years ago. All right, and it's like I had to. There's a couple times I jumped up, going, "No way, this is too intense," and had to pace for a while and put it down. Um, we'll go into that eventually. The next episode is going to be concerning Itzhak Bentov, pardon me, and Itzhak Bentov wrote a book called "Stalking the Wild Pendulum," and he was also one of the people that the CIA went to when they started the Gateway projects during the Cold War for their like little psychic warfare thing with Russia. So that'll be an interesting episode. You'll definitely want to see it. So I'm gonna play this song for you. It's a little fast, like a couple of the other songs I played, but as a musician, I found that it's like I love every type of music from all cultures except mainstream media. Sorry, I don't watch TV. I don't subject myself to mainstream media for a reason. It's like it's just I don't like my belief system being messed with, and I know for a fact that that's what's happening here. And eventually, I'm hoping that I'm able to basically prove enough that people can start untangling those knots that have been put in their belief system the world over, that is inaccurate information and holding them back from basically being able to continue climbing the ladder of consciousness. Basically, I want to go home. I don't know about you people, but I don't want to come back. And I'm tired. I've been here 54 years, and it's been 54 years of ass kickings. And personally, I mean, it's like I don't know how many times I've been on the wheel here, but it's like things are getting just. I want to go home and relax with the divinity. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it's like I think in order to really understand and learn what I need to know about myself in order to do that requires that I basically explore as much as I can of life as possible and evolve and learn and build character. That's I mean the only thing we got that's consistent in this world is an ass kicking, so that must be why we're here. But it's not pointless. Here in America, we have a bad habit of trying to protect our kids from the world, which is baffling because it's a really tough world right now. It's a lot tougher than it was when I grew up. And, the last thing you should be doing is protecting your kids from it. You should be preparing them for it. And nobody seems to, everybody just wants to protect them, protect them, protect them. I don't want my kid making mistakes. Well, that's how your child learns. You can't protect them from the world because then what happens? They turn 18 and you toss them out the door and they're not ready. It's about preparing for the world, not protecting from the world. This right now we got a lot of challenges coming up, and I look around and it's like people haven't been prepared, and it's like if we're not ready, I don't know if we're gonna make it. And it's not that far in the future, not that far at all. We have hard times coming. We got a lot of problems we got to deal with, and so long as we deal with it as individuals and argue about things that are really irrelevant, we're not going to make it. We're facing. I mean, we're facing extinction level problems right now. I mean, it's this is a make or break us as a species. If we can't hold together, and there's, I can and will eventually show you a large number of prophecies from very many, very, very, very many cultures that warn of this period of time right here, and they all pretty much say the same thing. If we don't pull it together, we're screwed. And I want to see us pull it together, and it's not really that hard. All you got to do basically is follow Jesus's teachings, and according to the book of Judas, what Jesus said was not that the only way to reach the divinity was through me. Quite the opposite. He said, "You must look within yourself for the kingdom of heaven. For if you look outside yourself, you will surely be lost. The kingdom of heaven resides within each and every individual." And that resonates with truth for me. I don't know about the rest of you. Your reality and your journey is your own, but it resonates very much as truth for me. All right, probably startled you there a little bit. My bad. Let's see. So as I say, I'm gonna leave you, and rather than botching the explanation of the spirituality of this civilization, I'm gonna show you a clip. It's about 8 minutes long, and it's Heather Lee Hooker, off of the channel Megalithomania, and basically, I was gonna paraphrase and all that, but it's like I would rather you hear it in her own words because it will give you an opportunity to see the sincerity, the basically the pathos, logos, and ethos, the energy that this researcher is putting out. And the reason I say that is because it resonates with truth for me. I can't speak for anybody else. It's not my place, but it's like it's something that I think you just need to you need to witness it for yourself. So that's how I choose to end the show tonight. So enjoy. I'm gonna be sitting there here the whole time watching with you because it's like I've watched this particular section several times, trying to come up with a good summary and paraphrase for it. But there's a lot of information covered here, and it's. I think you'll see what I mean when you get to watch this. 'Cause, this is it's staggering.
Right, well, first of all, where is Ukraine? Some of you might be thinking. Head north of the sea. Anything to do with the earthly world is symbolized by man, mammoths, horses, deer, anything that's.
All right, so this is what I'm talking about as far as the ladder of consciousness. Now, I beg to differ as far as there's this misnomer that a lot of archaeologists do, and that's because of the civilization and their beliefs when the concept of the duality in reality came out. That would be the good versus evil, God versus the devil. The white and the black, the yin and the yang, and that's it. They didn't really have a concept of the duality. So if you don't have a concept of the duality, the netherworld really becomes meaningless. However, if you believe in the ladder of consciousness, which you can see the ladder of consciousness right there, which is also a DNA strand. If you believe in the ladder of consciousness, then these pictographs of serpents, fish, and animals that people are misnomering as the netherworld. What this actually is it's called that is where basically the ladder of consciousness begins. Because consciousness is, you start basically as a baby, and you keep on coming back to the wheel and back to the wheel until we realize that it's like we don't have to be here. We got drugged down here by some kind of politics that went on, something that went on long ago, about apparently 5,000 years ago, that messed everything up. But before that, and it's like this is basically where it becomes what I'm trying to show becomes extremely important, because basically what it boils down to is that we lost sight of a lot of what our ancestors believed. And you start really digging into what our ancestors believed, and it's like it's very much in sync with modern science, and that's kind of where the whole argument between science and mysticism and all that. Once they separated those two, it became it's like we've since then, it seems like everything we've learned has been, we've taken steps back, not forward, and that's what I'm trying to show here as far as it goes. Is that it's like things have like dramatically been altered, and if you remember. If you remember my speech or my what I was talking about the last episode is one of the things we find is that, I mean, the one of the things they spoke of course, was destroying and rewriting history, and then getting it so people believe that history, right? And I mean you can easily see that in you look around, you can easily see that, it's like somewhere along the lines they decided that the history is wrong. And it's like I believe that's why eventually they had to destroy the library in Alexandria. Of course, they didn't actually destroy it, but I think if we raided the Vatican, we would find amazing amount of information basically that has been hidden from us. And I mean, it's too bad because it's like we need guidance right now. We're facing a very challenging time, and it's really disturbing that it's like that people would basically keep that from us, because I mean, I don't know. Like I say, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let the researchers on this speak in their own words, because it's like I don't think my words really do it as much justice, because it's like an important thing in academia is, of course, the legitimacy of those that you're using as sources. This is why I want you to see this 8 minutes of speech, is because it gives you a feeling for the expertise of my source on this, and that the more a person can basically connect with that pathos, logos, ethos with the source of information, the more likely that source of information is to get past one part of your brain and then into the actual part of the brain that it needs to go to.
At Archaim because it was a remarkable astronomical observatory. And in this line of megaliths as architectural pieces, it doesn't look like there's a lot there, but a lot has been drawn out of this. And I'm going to do a direct comparison with something familiar, Stonehenge, to look at the amount of data that has been extracted. And at Archaim, compared to Stonehenge, we have just slightly more observational data from solar and lunar evidence. But it's when it comes to the precision that we're looking at only 10 arc minutes a degree at Stonehenge and 1 arc minute a degree at Archaim. Very detailed, but it gets better. This ancient observatory is also showing us that these people understood that the pole has gone through various fixed positions over time. They've also suggested the golden ratio, John Martineau's real territory. They have articulated the zodiac here. They were recognizing fluctuations in power. They had alignments to the sun, to the moon, to the lunar orbits in relation to the ecliptic. And they also were showing evidence of axial precession. But what really stunned me is that Archaim shows evidence of bringing together 2 geometries which converge at a point where the angle of the summer solstice sunrise at this little marker stone is 52.65. And that, remarkably, corresponds to the geographical latitude of Archaim. It would have been exact, but they had taken the height of the horizon from a local mountain. So stunning precision. Now, I have here a pentagonal geometry done by my friend David. And it's because the pentagonal geometries are revealing something remarkable. The inner harmonic is the visible material hard part. This is where we exist. This is where we become shape and form. And it's because we are out of phase between these circles that we become visible in this field. It's where we exist as a mathematical energy in a homogeneous system. Archaim today is still a remarkable place. It's the place where you can actually feel something different in the earth. All sorts of things are going on about variations in temperature, etc. And it's all because of the data that Tim was talking about, that these mantle channels. And it's evident that priests were choosing these areas very deliberately to do something. So because of all the phenomena, it's hardly surprising that today Archaim is the #1 destination in the world for psychic tourism, because people love the feeling of just sort of floating, feeling disembodied. But what we think this was for is that people were actually tapping into something, tapping into a higher consciousness, into this electromagnetic energy at these sites. And Archaim was not on its own. There are at least 20 other towns in this area. I actually think they weren't towns at all, that they were just places to go to for something to happen. And there seems to be a relationship between the shape of the sites and an axial relationship with what's going on out in the skies. Now, Tim said to look out for that Kerhan that you saw earlier, because what I think we're looking at here is a chambered cairn. And we know that chambered cairns were used for healing purposes. And in the text, it talks about them renovating body organs in structures like this, according to the principle of collective cells, like a beehive. So it's as though they were incubating people for healing. And because we live in a world of vibration and resonance, which can slip out of tune, they seem to bring us back into phase, making, from taking us from sickness back to health. So the sages and the priests of ancient Ukraine seem to be mastering bioenergetic field technology. Another thing that I think they were doing was healing people in a different way, doing it in a communal way. And what I'm suggesting is that one of the structures they have there, from all the concentric timber posts, was that they had an amphitheatre. And we know that there was a link with amphitheatres being associated with healing, because at Epidaurus in Greece, at Gand in France, as well as the famous Kolos Circle or the wooden Colosseum, that they practiced healing. And it's as though they are a bioenergetic temple for either curing people or from preventing harm to the body. And this was produced through the collective mind by using a resonant technology, rather like cymatics and Dr. Hans Jenny's work in recovering this, which was imprinting geometric patterns on the mind to bring it back into phase. And anyone who knows the Gibson Amphitheatre in Los Angeles, I hope they will forgive me for overlaying this on the map of Archaim to show what I mean about an amphitheatre. So from what we've seen and what Tim was talking about earlier, there are definite links at one time in man's history to places that matters, geomantic forces that mattered, all to do with bringing in electrical energy to heal or to get to heaven in the cosmos. And this is what their dolmens were about as well. If you notice, they have a lovely aperture at the front. And I'm going to suggest, following on from what Chris was saying earlier, that this was acting in the same way as Newgrange. This quartz plug that filled a little hole, at a particular time in the lunar cycle, this quartz, when the reverse energy came through it, would have glowed. And this was the signal for the penetration priest or consciousness priest to say, the site is ready, we start using it. This geologist is saying that they were operating like magnetrons, where they were doing these very short wavelength energies in a microwave form, so that people could change their consciousness in these places. And it seems as though the fractal nature of the field they were working in was superimposing a memory that I call dark energy of the previous states of ancestors or gods. And hence the reason, because all of this energy gathers at the top, at the apex, you have the stone babbas on the top. Now, how did they do this? Well, lots and lots of ways are described. I will just take you through perhaps the less strange ones, which was to do with the matter, mind, and energy. It seems very invasive, but they actually trepanated the skull, drilling holes, taking sections out in order to heighten consciousness. They did the same with cranial deformation at birth in order to empower people. The other thing they did was to empower the seat of the soul, the psyche, to have the pranic energy rising through the channels to join with the universal mind. And here we have again this little cosmic creative principle on the goddesses. And they practiced Kundalini yoga, which Carl Jung said you should never do, it's extremely dangerous. But it's to empower the psyche. And it was thought that this was partially a vitality that resided in the body, in the squishy bits of the brain and the spine marrow, which is said to turn into a serpent at death. And indeed, the whole object of Kundalini Yoga is to awaken the serpent, to cross through the consciousness centers, to meet over the top of the body. And we think that the Sahelnia Kurgan that Tim was showing you earlier is a consciousness-themed burial, where you get the two serpents meeting at the altar receiver and joining the pranic energies together. So what they were doing is actually voyaging into other worlds, which may seem strange, but it's no different, I would say, to a Victorian traveller who, when he went on a trip, would just prepare well, be ready to meet new people, keep a record of his journey, and then share it with people afterwards. This is not supernatural. This is simply a science or a process that we've only got the coattails of and don't quite understand. But what was evident is that there was real contact within this body sphere of the anthroposphere. This is the realm where man could travel from the Vedic earthly Yavi into Navi, the Vedic realm of death, and come back again. This is a living person having communion with the ancestors. And he did it by prepared intent at the altar receiver within this field that goes by the name of information, bioenergetic, inerton, whatever. It's even God to some people. So in this fertile garden of Eden, this harmonic point of absolute beginning in pure consciousness, man was able to meet his ancestors and his gods. This is the only place where he could drink the sweet water of the source. This is where he received the radiant intellect of the ancestors. And Chris was saying earlier, what was it that triggered people out of that Paleolithic mindset? I think it was because they found a way through to this universal consciousness. This is what the Neolithic revolution was. It was a revolution in human consciousness. And it was realized through reaching Eden. And Eden is a concept. It's a metaphysical realm of pure consciousness. And I make no apologies for ending up with Stonehenge. If it's really part of Errata, then it sort of fits the bill. And here it's been overlaid with Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man and a couple of 7 and 17 geometries to focus in on the center. Because when man and geometry come together, something seems to come through those little gaps, those little interstices, these geometric patterns that are made up of vibrations and frequencies and resonances within this field. And it's as though Leonardo understood and knew this, because there's such a beautiful fit of the measure of man uniting reason and uniting belief to universal higher consciousness. So the man here is representing universal humanity, materializing through and from the mathematical energy of pattern, showing the perfection of the universe. So man hasn't invented numbers, he hasn't invented geometry, he's a consequence of them. And geometry is not related to creation, it is creation. So, to answer the question that Megalith Ammonia poses every year, what were they up to? Well, they seem to have discovered a way of empowering the psyche, of achieving remarkable levels of superconsciousness by creating this cosmos or enclosure, congregating at a particular place on a particular date, coming together for the same reason, being prepared, and then sharing what they've learned with other people. And I think if we leave out the surgery, that pretty much amounts to a very good conference ethos. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening.
And it's as I say, I could not possibly have summed that up better than that. Okay. So, this one thing before I go. You notice that she mentioned several times there was some stuff in there that was definitely she spoke of as her opinion, but she also spoke several times throughout that those were the records that were left. That's that's what they were able to ascertain out of some of the Proto-Sumerian writing and the petroglyphs that were left in these megaliths. So basically that was what we believed before the flood. Um, and there was still some vestiges of that in the Sumerian and Egyptian culture, but it began to really disappear about the time the Library of Alexandria disappeared, and that's something we're going to go into another time. I think Heather Lee's apt description of our practices and spiritual beliefs 42,000 years ago illustrate my point that as of our understanding today of the universe around us and our place in it seems to have been stunted compared to what we knew 42,000 years ago. And it seems to be deliberately that way and is continuing because this is the only source of information I could find in English on this. Although there is plenty in Ukrainian and there's some in Russian, but as far as English translation and the Western world's understanding of this civilization, it's a myth. So, I don't think I know the ancients understood the realm of the spirit a lot better than we do today. And it's very critical that we regain some of that understanding going into the future because, there's hard times coming and it's like we're very divided. It's like that pathos, logos, and ethos energy that people used to share is gone. And, it's hard to find. We're all isolated in our own little world, and it's like we're bombarded by so much error that we're scrambled. We're out of sync. They basically next episode I'm going to take us from there 43,000 years ago, and I'm going to take us up to now, or actually basically back in the 70s. And I'm going to show you basically what the CIA understood about this same topic that this lady was just talking about, because it turns out that our scientific understanding of the nature of reality is precisely what this civilization believed at this point, although that's not being made common knowledge, and that's the thing. We are being diminished deliberately. And there's going to be a time when I'm going to go back to what I suspect is going on and clues throughout our ancient texts and our mythologies. But I'm going to leave you with one last thing, and then I'm going to call it a day. Again, you're listening to BrooklynStation.com, which we also have KingandQueenRadio.com. 24/7, good music on both stations. One's multicultural, one's more towards like house and Afro-Cuban. I highly recommend listening. We got a show tomorrow night with the DJ Boo, and then Thursday we got Shan, and then Saturday we got the dance parade. Woohoo! Other than that, let's see. Tomorrow I'm heading to the thing at the city hall for the dance parade, concerning basically they were trying to eliminate the last vestiges of the cabaret law, which made it cabaret illegal. Um, Now, see, the misconception on that is that it was just basically doing zoning on where there could be strippers, but cabaret wasn't stripping; it was an art form. It became stripping as we became less and less able to appreciate the art form. Um, Basically, and it didn't only apply to cabaret, and it wasn't really even about cabaret, because if you start digging into the period, which was back right before and during prohibition, it was more about basically making it so minorities didn't have a place to hang out, get drunk, and have a good time. And we need to get rid of those old laws like that, because it's like we're all in this together. We all come from a common background, and it's like we all pretty much need to we need to learn from our ancestors, because our ancestors knew what was going on, and very few of us do. And if you're walking around feeling like you know what's going on, then you're fooling yourself. Because I have hardly watched a day of TV in my life, but I've read everything I could get my dirty hands on, and I know nothing. Right? So if you're walking around thinking you know what's going on, you're lying to yourself. Especially if you're basing it on any type of information that we're fed today, because nothing we are subjected to today is accurate. It's all disinformation. There is no truth to be found outside of yourself at this point in time in our society. The only way you're going to find any type of direction or any type of truth is if you seek within yourself. And that means you got to have the strength to look at yourself objectively and accept yourself for who you are, which some people will die before they do that. It does take courage, but when you get at the other end of it, man, it's one of the best things you could ever do with your life. For as far as anything else goes, yeah. Remember, dance parade, and we are still looking for. We are still looking for sponsors. We're looking for dance schools or anybody that would like to participate on the float. And we do have, if you look on brooklynstation.com or communityqueenradio.com, we do have a GoFundMe up, because we did fund it out of our own pockets, and to support the dance parade. And it's like it's not cheap to be in a parade, turns out. So any help on the part of our listeners would be greatly appreciated, because you know how it goes. It's like sadly, money is an illusion, but it's an illusion that you still need to get through in this life, and that's all there is to it. So y'all have a good night, and next week what we're going to do is, like I say, we're going to get a little bit more contemporary, and we're going to look at where science supports this particular concept of spirituality, consciousness, and the nature of reality. By doing that, I am hoping I can get I'm hoping that the information gives people some type of direction to start looking to find their own truth, because again, we all live in our own reality. I can't tell you what your truth is. I can only tell you what mine is in my experience, and I can show you and I can of course expose you to those I learned from, because it's like you can learn from everybody, but you have to remain teachable. And to remain teachable, that means you have to listen, and you have to actually listen. Not listen to your own voice, because there's a lot of people that the only thing they hear when they listen is what's going on in their head. But listen to what the other person is saying. Connect with them. Place yourself in their position if you can. So, and again, I'm Infinite Sorrow. I'm here on brooklynstation.com. And I thank you all for listening. For those that listen, I'm sorry about the various glitches. for as long as I don't deal with electronics anymore, I think that's probably going to be, it seems to be a permanent part of my life now. I will tell you that, it's like I practice a type of meditation that stems off of these beliefs that she was just talking about, combined with some of the more modern scientific discoveries for meditation. So, and a lot of that has to do with frequency. And next week we're gonna sit down and we're gonna start really digging into the importance of sound and frequency, because that's really basically what it all boils down to. This is the universe here is basically an incredibly complex song. And I mean, I think that's beautiful myself, because when I go home, it means that basically I'm gonna be kicking back, listening to the most awesome music you could possibly ever hear, and I won't have to worry about none of this crap no more. The thing is that, I think this is probably going to be my last time at the wheel, and I'm striving hard to get so I can graduate and move on to the next level of consciousness, because things I'm tired. But I want the rest of you there with me. I mean, it's like, there's always that joke about, if hell's got, Jimi Hendrix and all those other rock stars in it, I want to go to hell because that's where the concert is. Well, actually, connecting with the divinity is where the world's greatest rock concert is. So that's what I want to do, and I want you all there with me so we can all enjoy. So, take it, like I say, the teachers that taught me said, take what you need and throw away the rest. I kind of beg to differ. I said, take what you need and just set the rest on a shelf, because, you may need it and you may be able to use it later. And, that's basically what this show is about. Giving you what you need to help you overcome that which would keep you basically down. We are here at Brooklyn Station LLC. We want to see everybody rise above that which would keep them down. Because we need that. Have a good night. Thank you for listening.